So I use stories all the time. I mean, not just as sometimes as entertainment, but as a way of, I suppose, as a way of engaging and of entertaining and engaging and informing and educating possibly. And the more I go on as, I mean, before I was a vicar, I worked in the BBC mainly in radio and television as a writer, producer, and presenter. So, and particularly with younger children, I ended up in CBeebies, and there that you told stories through pictures, and you had to be aware of being simple but not simplistic, and I find that's a fantastically transferable skill into sermons. To break it down into the constituent parts, and not take anything for granted. But the more I carry on, as a vicar and looking at Jesus, and the more I realise what I have to work with is so good. I mean, the Bible is so vilified for so many things, mainly because people say, "Oh, it can't be true," and it's not a factual account. It's stories that were told over thousands of years that have been put together by people, and the fact that some of them are 4,500 years old, and they're still relevant. I mean, shows the value of the stories. And to look at Jesus and to look at how he used stories and how the gospel writers then wrote those up. I mean, he used all the technique that anybody would want to use. He had fantastic characters, real drama. He was relevant to the people who were listening, and he was like he reminds me of Billy Bragg a bit, because he just wanted change. He wanted people to see how things were, and to offer them an alternative. That's why when I see Billy Bragg, that's what he tends to do, and that's a great thing. And he used people that he met every day and who people would have known. So he wasn't. People say he was floating above the earth, but he got his feet dirty and his hands dirty. He was enmeshed in humanity, and he also used ideas from the culture at the time as well, and all the things around him. And as well as that, with all the sort of relevance of like the soap opera relevance of first century Palestine, he also had this amazing ability to undergird it with this sort of with a parable, with a meaning. And to me, one of the great glories of humanity is that we have an imagination, and we're not necessarily literal beings. That we can you can have a metaphor or a simile, or you can present you can use irony. You can present one thing, but everybody knows it's the opposite, and that's an amazing thing that our brains can do. And if faith is about anything, it's about that. I think it's about the opposite of faith isn't doubt; it's certainty, and the idea of this liminal space between what's real and we can find in our imagination is what stories do amazingly. They put up one thing, but we all know that there's something else there in the middle. And Jesus did that all the time, and he invited people to make connection. I remember when the best pictures are on the radio. That's what we used to say at the BBC. And you're giving people words, but people they create the images in their mind. I've just read Under the Skin, and because it's got a picture of Scarlett Johansson on the front from the film, I couldn't get her face out of my mind when I was looking at the character in the book, and that's a real shame, because it denies us the imagination. And one of the things about stories that I've learned is, we used to say in television, there was the sit forward and sit back moments. The times when the television in the corner was just there and you were sitting back and relaxing, but the times that it drew you in, those were the key moments. And I think that with a story, you need those moments where you have a bit of relaxing time. People can't be forward all the time; they have to be forward. And Jesus did that brilliantly. And he also had, I always try and call it the enduring melody. He had this idea that to be fully human is the best thing that we can be as a human being, and the way we do that is by love, and that here he was as the pure form of God's love, and so that's his stories are completely that's his enduring melody, and all that runs through every single story he tells is is the outrageous love of God, which is beyond our imagining. And it's by means of that we can become the best we can be. That's why I think change is so important, because we have the now and we have the possibility, and I think Jesus provides us with that way that we can bridge the two. But he also used a lot of satire, and I preach about this week after week, how the Pharisees at the time were they weren't bad people, but they were people who wanted things to stay the same. They were the conservatives in a very deliberate way, and that was really anti what he was talking about. Not that they desired bad for people, but they just wanted people to stay exactly where they were put, so that they could be controlled, and they could exercise their power base. And nearly in so many instances, Jesus is talking to a crowd, and he'll be having this fantastic, subversive conversation with the Pharisees, to tell them that, in a horrible way, or sometimes horrible, but this is about possibility. You're about certainty. You're about saying to people, you have to be good enough. You have to follow these rules. But here is something more amazing than that. I think I was trying to think of what story would sum all that up, and it's the prodigal son. Where a father has two sons, and the younger one says, "Can I have half of my inheritance?" He gives him his inheritance. He goes off, wastes it, wants to come home, and plans this speech that he's going to make to his father. "I'll be your servant. I know I've done wrong, but..." And then as he comes up the drive of the house, the father runs out to meet him and hugs him and brings him home, and they have a big party. And the son, that's the older son, stayed there, is really pissed off because he'd been there all the time, and the father says, "I love you both," but he's come back. And there are three reasons why that story is amazing. Firstly, the character of the father, and again, they would have known this at the time. The patriarch was a hugely respected figure. Everybody kowtowed to the patriarch, and the patriarch would have been carried around everywhere. Wouldn't have had to do anything, And the idea in this that the son is on his way home, and everybody would have been scandalised that this son was going to come home after wasting the father's money, all his hard work over those years, and that the father runs to meet him would have been an amazing moment. People said, "Well, of course he wouldn't," because they just wouldn't have done that. The idea of this old man hitching up his robes and running out to meet his son was incredible, and that that's the enduring melody of the outrageous love of God for us. And the second thing, and I haven't really sort of tested this one, but the idea that the younger son is allowed to go off is fantastic. And most people sort of just think, well, it's just about him wasting, but it wasn't. It was about him living well. It was about his desire to fulfill himself and to find his own way. And what an amazing picture of what maturity is. That to become mature, we need to be allowed to move away. That old Joseph Cooper, that's a great thing about the hero with 1,000 faces, and how all great stories have this threefold thing, that the separation, the enlightenment, and the return. And it's the same with our maturity as human beings, that we need the freedom to be able to separate ourselves in order to learn, and then we return to the place we first started, but we're wiser people. And that's exactly what the son has been allowed to do. And if the father hadn't allowed him to have that money in the first place, he would never have done that. And that's an amazingly deep idea of the human condition that's wrapped up in that. And the third one is the guy who stays at home. It is very much the Pharisee, the conservative. The one who just wants to play it safe. And you can do that. You can play things safely, but you get you reap what you sow. You reap the safety, and you miss out on the joy and the pain. And that's what life is about. It's about embracing the joy and the destitution. So that one story has the most incredible, and I must have told that 100 times in different ways. I remember when I worked for the BBC, we'd find new ways of telling the Grand Old Duke of York. We'll do it with apples and bananas, or we'll do it with pieces of wool or something like that. And it's the same way with this, but however you tell it, there is that amazing moment. And one of the greatest interpretations of that story, I think, when Rembrandt painted it, it's this old man with his arms over the back of the son who's kneeling down in sort of. And the amazing thing about that painting is that one of the hands is a gnarled old man's hand, and the other one is a woman's hand. And so Rembrandt takes that on another level, and then we see the fullness of God. We're talking about the fullness of humanity, but the fullness of God is beyond gender. And once you introduce that idea, that creates a whole other fertile bed to go in. So that's what I have to work with, which is fantastic. And I use stories in assemblies all the time. And what I've tried to do is to try and because I was an actor, I can do voices and stuff like that. And I try and get the essence of the story and tell it without notes, and have the confidence to just be able to go slowly or to have a dramatic pause. So that sort of makes it come alive, and also changes it slightly as well. And you'll often find new things. I've been guilty of telling a Bible story and inserting all sorts of other interpretations. So I do that, but also it's not just the story itself for entertainment value, but what you hope is that it taps in, and I think it's what Jesus did. He tapped into the story of the audience, that we encourage people to look at what their own stories. And I think that's something St. Stephen's does very well, that you have an awareness of where you are in your story and where you're going or where you can go, and that sort of that process of reflection is. And a lot of people don't ever get to do that, but story can help us. We can see ourselves in the characters and the situations, and we can say, well, how is this affecting me? Why is this affecting me in the way it does? But between the looking back and the looking forward, there is this, there is the moment as well, and to live well and to live fully and reflectively in each moment. Not allowing a moment to pass without our awareness of how precious that moment is. I think that's story helps us to be present in that as well, and it also fits into the whole idea of church. The church building tells a story of our baptism, of our initiation, of our washing, our starting, all the way up to the communion table, which is our food for the journey. It's our way of saying, I'm in the presence of something bigger than I can ever understand or imagine, and I'm going to be fed in that literally by taking bread and wine, and that's why I think Jesus did that. That's a valuable part of his own story was our participation in it, and that's why I love communion so much, and why I think church is an important thing. So there was that, and then the last thing I wanted to just mention briefly was when I worked in school radio, I did a series called can't remember now, but it was about predictive storytelling, and the idea was that a story would be told for the first time, and the children listening to it, who would have been sort of years 1 and 2, would have been able to join in after a very short amount of time. So there's a lot of repetition and a lot of flagging of what the answer was. Like the man came into the room and there was a cat, and the cat said meow, and immediately George says meow, and the cat's name was Brian, and when he went back into the room, there was the cat who was called Brian, who said meow, and already they're a part of it, and they have a sense of ownership of it. And I think what I try to do in church, or anything I do really, is to even if people are coming from miles away from religion or faith or anything like that, is to enable them to have this ownership of the story, to make a way that they can come in and be a part of it, so that no one is a participator, no one is an observer from a distance, but everybody's invited to be a participant, and it becomes up to the listener whether or not they actually participate or not. And it's just a way of merging the stories from years ago, from the future, from now, from me, from them, from everybody, and making it all part of one another, which is what the human story is really.